Good morning, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us once again for Mondays with Mark. We ask for our usual housekeeping announcements. We ask that you do keep your microphones muted throughout the conversation, just so we can hear our host and our guest a little easier. And excuse me while I get something caught in my throat. If you do have questions or anything you'd like to have, hear more about, please use the chat function up top. It's a little conversation bubble. You can put your question or comment in there, and we'll monitor that. Or you can use the little smiley face with the hand raise emoji, and you can unmute yourself towards the end of the show and ask your question verbally. But without any further ado, I want to introduce our host for our show, our weekly show here, our district director here in Rhode Island, Mark Hayward.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Evidently, it's going around, whatever it is. But this is going to be a great conversation, and I'll tell you why. I am going to learn about as much as everybody else is about skills for Rhode Island's future, because when Nina was booked, I wasn't sure what skills for Rhode Island's future actually did. So in our preliminary discussion that we had just a couple of minutes ago, I am really excited about trying to find out what it is. Nina, Pande, that's how it's pronounced, Nina?
That is correct, Mark.
Great. So welcome to Mondays with Mark. I know that there's a lot of people, and we have a lot of people who actually have jumped on to our session this morning. What is skills for Rhode Island's future?
Well, Mark, first, thank you for having me here with you today. So excited to have this conversation. At our core, Skills for Rhode Island's Future is a workforce development organization. We're known as what's called a demand-driven workforce intermediary. We started the organization in 2016 under the Raimondo administration when they were really looking at a way to strengthen our local workforce system and bring in those demand-driven practices, where we start with employer partners, uniquely understand their immediate hiring needs as well as long-term hiring needs, and then try to help develop talent pipelines based on those needs. So to help fill current hiring as well as projected future hiring, and help inform what training programs should look like so that our workforce system aligns directly with the demands of our industry partners. It's really a departure for Rhode Island from historically what has been a train and pray model, where they would train people up and pray that they would get a job. This is very highly targeted interventions. And currently we work with over 200 employer partners throughout the state of Rhode Island across all industries, helping them really be thoughtful about their hiring patterns, again, for current needs as well as long-term hiring needs.
What are the skill components? And because I'm looking at some of the people that are part of this organization, which includes Bank of America. So we continually talk from a small business perspective that there are a need for individuals coming out of institutions of higher learning. But yet, on the other side of that, we have such a skills deficit when it comes to trade labor, to carpenters, plumbers, electricians. Do you deal with both of those? And I want to get into the workforce, because there was a lot of workforce development boards, and I'd like to talk to how you interact with them as well.
Certainly. So the quickest answer is I can say kind of yes, and we work with all of the above that you just mentioned, right? So as an intermediary, our role really sits in the middle of having our business partners' best interest in mind, representing them at the table, working very closely with all types of training partners. So many on the call may be familiar with the Real Jobs Rhode Island programs.
Right.
Those are, again, demand-driven programs. And there are phenomenal training partners and employer partners that are connected to that ecosystem. But a lot of times what happens is there's a big disconnect with the community and the actual talent pipeline. So again, we get to sit in the middle of that. So we're that connector between folks in the community who may be looking for a job. We specifically focus on people who are unemployed, underemployed, kind of those first-time job seekers, helping employer partners meet some of their diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring goals, and then again, inform training programs so that we can make sure when people complete those training programs, whether that's Mark right out of high school, maybe it's even after college, so it's not necessarily designed for people with a 4-year degree. We want to make sure every Rhode Islander has a path to a career that'll pay them a livable wage job.
Do you actively speak to, because I know that you're on the Providence School Committee, but do you actively go out and talk to school committees, school administrators, in trying to reach into that. And the reason why I say this is because, when I talk to small business and good, not indifferent, I've been here, this is 40 years for me. So, I mean, that's a long time, but I continually get, information from the business community saying, hey, we're not getting the kind of people that we need for the kind of skills that we need on these industries. And it could be, and it's across the board. It goes from high skilled people who understand finance to people who can run and remember, our manufacturing has transitioned, Nina, in such a way that it's not the old lathe where you're making the machine tools, but it's more computerized, computer science, and how you actually program the machine. So are you doing any running interference with school committees or with administrators of schools just to kind of give them the baseline?
We are. And so I just want to make a point of clarification, Mark. I recently stepped away from the Providence School Board, but was there for going on almost 13 years.
It's right here.
I apologize. It probably should have been updated to send it to you, but I did spend almost 13 years on the Providence School Board. And part of the reason why I stepped away is to become more proactive in exactly what you were just talking about. So we run what are called experiential learning programs. And you mentioned manufacturing, and I'll give you a great real-time story that we're dealing with right now. So Yushin America is one of our employer partners. Manufacturing, right? Very different manufacturing. Right. It's not the manufacturing of our parents. And just for the record, I grew up in a manufacturing family. My dad had a chemical manufacturing company through the 70s, 80s, and into the early 90s. And it's very different. I grew up in that environment. I don't recognize the manufacturing floors of today because they are so highly advanced technologically and their work environment is so different. But Yushin America, we run an internship program and they take our high school interns. And so, Mark, we're trying to take students who are doing what are traditionally known as those CTE programs, career and technical education programs, who have an interest in manufacturing, in supply chain logistics, in engineering, and we're pairing them up with our employer partners. And we were so proud. Yushin wants to hire 3 of our high school interns and have them retained as part of their staff after school. So that's exactly what we're trying to do. And I feel oftentimes, and I won't go off into my soapbox about public education because I have many ideas and thoughts, but oftentimes we look to our schools to prepare our students for the workforce, where they really should be focusing on the fundamentals. And that's where organizations like ours come in, and we're not exclusive, but we, again, create those experiential learning opportunities so students can take what they're learning in the classroom and learn how to apply it to the real world. We do that both with high school students as well as first generation college students. Those are 2 of the programs that we run that have really close tiebacks to K-12 education as well as all of the colleges here in the state of Rhode Island.
But wouldn't that also require that school administrators and teachers generally buy into the concept of what you're talking about? And I don't mean to keep going back to I know that you were working with the Providence schools through your former position, but aggressively work. For example, I was the mayor of East Providence, so a long time ago. So we developed, when I was there back in 1976, 78, we worked with the school committee to develop the career and technical school that we had. In fact, we brought in people from Barrington, Warren, and Bristol into the East Providence High School Technical School, Career and Technical School, to provide those skills. Admittedly, they're a lot different today than they are when they were back then. But we felt that it was a collaborative concept where but we needed to have administrators and teachers buy in to that particular, this is what needs to be done. Not everybody needs to go to college, and here are some great opportunities. And so your organization, which is terrific. I mean, this is really a grassroots discussion on what we should be looking at from a future perspective. So do you have the opportunity to talk to administrators? Do you reach out to teachers? Do you do fundamental training?
All of that, yes. And I will say, I am always impressed at how open our school administrators are to these concepts. We actually work with every 39 school district in Rhode Island, and we recruit students from every single school. The administrators have bought into that work-based learning, experiential learning model.
Right.
The challenge is always capacity, Mark, right? And you know this from your former hat of running a municipality. Capacity, it's never a lack of want or innovation, it's a lack of capacity and resources, which is why I think organizations like ours serve a critical piece, because we can parallel what the schools are doing and bring it out into the community differently. But I have to say again, every administrator that we've spoken to, we meet with the superintendents, we meet with district administrators, we meet with career coordinators monthly. They all want more of this. They've all bought in. They see the transformative nature of the work. There's direct correlations between experiential learning and increased attendance, increased academic success, increased engagement. And those are things we need now more than ever, because the pandemic has really created a disconnect between the classroom and life. And so this really helps that build that glue that so many of our students need. And I did see in the chat about mentoring
Yeah,
and
I was just going to
coaching.
bring that up. Yeah,
That is
that
wrapped
says,
into it.
so
Yeah, so
the comment in the chat says small businesses can't coach and mentor inexperienced candidates. Do you go on to mentor candidates post placement? And I think that's a great question.
It's a great question. And yes, and we actually coach and mentor the students prior to their placement. So a student in our high school program, let's just focus on the high school for a moment. We're actually going to begin our recruitment in September and October for a placement next summer. So those students are working with us for about 9 months prior to their placement, and we're working with them on essential work skills. This is what we say to every single one of our employer partners. And in our high school side, particularly for small businesses, this is really important. We're the employer of record. We take on all the liability, we take on all the wages, we manage all the payroll. What we ask of our employers is something that we can't do, which is provide that technical training. So we will be that coach not only to that intern, but also to the small business owner and the staff of the small business to help design that internship program and help you become that coach, that technical coach and mentor to that intern, so that they can learn the skills that your company needs. We find that that's where the secret sauce is. If we take all of the risk away from the small business owner, or any business for that matter, then you can actually train them based on the skill sets that you need. And we manage all of the soft skill stuff. So the attendance, the payroll, the working with the family, the transportation, we take that all on, including equipping them with, if they need safety equipment to work on the job or any types of uniform. We manage all of that. So it's a low risk proposition for businesses to get involved. We work with small businesses to design if you've never had an internship program before, and then our staff support them throughout their summer experience with you.
So I asked about the educational side, so I'm going to flip to the other side. Do you talk to, cajole, so to speak, the business side of it, like the chambers of commerce, the trade associations, and I know you have certain companies, but I'm trying to make a connection that probably the connection is not there right now. But because chambers of commerce across the state, we have 19 of them. They're very active. Actually, SBA is members of most of them. But we also are members of trade associations too. What we hear back from them, Nina, is, I don't know what to do with these people. We don't, we have businesses who are looking for people. Where do we go? How do we do it? And I think that connection is as important as the connection with the administrators and school teachers and facilitators on both sides. And you say?
And I say, yes, we do. And we're a member of every single one of those associations as well. And in fact, Mark, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce. We were incubated out of the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce. Lori White has been one of our founding board members and is still very active on the board with us. We work with all of the chambers of commerce, Northern Rhode Island. Liz, we have a great relationship down in Newport with Erin, and they even take our interns as well. So not only
That's
do they
great.
know about our services, but they actually host interns, and they do it as a way to show their employer base, their members, that this is something that's available and accessible to them. And we actually do present in front of the boards of directors at the different associations. We work closely with a lot of the different industry associations as well, from the CPA Association to SHRM, all the way around. And we actually play a few different roles in that space. One is we can actually pipeline talent. So if they're doing training programs, we'll help connect talent to those training programs. But then we also use them as a training provider, a thought leader, as we think through program design based on what our employer partners need. And so that's a very common relationship that we love to manage, because there's some great thinking and ideology that comes out of that.
What about organizations or associations like John Marco Antonio's and the Rhode Island Builders Association, the
Absolutely.
Association of General Contractors, because they are always seeking qualified employees. And it's just, we hear from John all the time. And the reason is, I want to talk about Block Island. We go to Block Island every single year, and this year when we went over, the town manager as well as 3 members of the town council came and said, we're desperate.
Mm-hmm.
We no longer have a plumber on the island. We no longer have an electrician on the island. And every time that we tried to do something, even for the smallest jobs in the middle of the night, somebody loses electricity because they have X. Says we have to go off island and bring those individuals on island. And the critical nature of having skilled individuals on island and forming businesses on the island is important to us. So, and I've been working with Secretary Tanner, who I love. She's just absolutely
Awesome.
the best.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to figure out, how do we respond to the needs of Block Island, which in some instances are isolated. And you talk about working with all 39 municipalities. Well, Block Island is one of them. How are you reacting to something like that?
Yeah, and that's one of our great challenges. I will share with you, during our internship design thinking, Block Island came up multiple times, and we said that we would try to do a one-off for them, and we worked with businesses in Block Island to be able to figure that out. And then the pandemic hit and things changed a little bit. So
Right.
we're getting back to that. But Mark, I think what you're speaking about is critical, and this goes back to how is our educational system preparing students for the workforce of tomorrow. There's something really exciting, and I'd love to come back and maybe even meet with you first to share how we plan on introducing that experiential learning opportunity to students early and often, starting in the middle school grades. So you mentioned John Marcantonio. We work with the Builders Association. We've actually helped pipeline talent into some of their job training programs. And I'm going to put a pin in it because I'd love to come back to the conversation about one of the things that we are working on to help small businesses. But we are also on that educational front trying to be more intentional about connecting the classroom to the world of work. And so we're partnering with an educational technology company and trying to leverage technology, what we've seen work in education, and be able to expose students to all of these different career pathways, again, early and often, right? Because they don't get those exposures necessarily in school. And then we can be intentional about how do we connect them to the world of work when they graduate. We believe firmly in that model. We also believe that a 4-year college degree is no longer the path to a livable wage job. We
Right.
believe college is important, but you can gain that through credentials and certifications and other pathways as well. And we encourage folks to continue their higher academics. And so even when you're in a career, continue going to school. That's that career pathing that for us is equally important. Getting them introduced to a career is one thing, helping them understand their trajectory in that pathway and the educational components that go along with it, short-term and long-term, is what we're trying to achieve. We're not saying don't go to college. We're saying look at all options and continue your college so that it helps strengthen your career pathways within a specific industry.
And I think what we're, you talk about a viable wage, and I think that that's what we have been trying to say. Listen, if you think that going to an institution of higher learning is going to get you where you need to be in a certain career path, that's great. But in order to make a substantial wage, that does not necessarily mean that that's true in fact, because you can also make a substantial wage. And in many instances, Nina, that plumbers and carpenters and electricians are making far more than those who are actually going in for PT, OT, whatever it is. So I mean, and I think,
or human services, absolutely,
right, human services.
Yes.
And the thing of it is individuals need to look generally at the whole landscape and say, what can I be best at, and what will be my best path to be successful, be it college or be it trade associate, some kind of trade, which leads me to your interaction with, and by the way, we're over 2/3 of the way there.
And we haven't even gotten to the whole small business stuff yet, which means I would love to come back.
Okay, but I do want you to get to some of the small business stuff.
Sure.
But the interaction between, because everybody on my side of the aisle knows everything about workforce development boards. They say, oh, go to the Cranston Workforce Development Board, the Providence. What is your interaction with those particular boards?
So it's very active. So we actually are funded largely through the Governor's Workforce Board, the Rhode Island Governor's Workforce Board, but we also work very closely with the Providence Cranston WIB. So we are in constant communication, and a lot of our design thinking happens through these really intentional conversations that we have. But we have a very close relationship, not only with the Department of Labor and Training, but you mentioned Liz Tanner with Commerce Corporation. Through the pandemic, we were helping support pretty much every state agency in building talent pipelines. Again, working very closely with the Raimondo administration on even designing and developing programs for field hospital. If the need came where we had to turn on a light switch for a field hospital, we were helping in the back end building those talent pipelines. And so we work very cooperatively, not only with our state partners, but also some of our federal partners as well.
Yeah, I would just remind everybody on the call, if you have on the program today, if you have questions, you can raise your hand or you can put the question in the chat, and I'm sure Nina would be happy to be able to respond to that. Let's talk a little bit about the small business components and what do you see as what do you consider success when it comes to small business in the workforce, Rhode Island skills for Rhode Island's future?
Yeah, I feel like our small business is still the backbone of our local economy, right? And so we need to make sure our small businesses are healthy. We hear from many of them, Mark, and you've already articulated this, that they're struggling to find talent, right? Go back to your Block Island story. Just everyday talent. We're hearing from small businesses that they're reducing their hours because they don't have enough staff, or they're reducing their footprint because they can't provide the level of customer service that they wanted. And if I could just go back for a moment, we started our work with small businesses probably about 4.5 years ago. And it actually came through our board president at the time, John Sennett, who some of you may know from Gilbane, formerly with Gilbane. He kept coming to us, Gilbane, as well as other contractors, and said, general contractors, and said, Nina, we're struggling to find that trades talent that you were talking about. And so many of them look to contract with small businesses to be able to help carry out whatever their large projects are. So 4.5 years ago, we started studying this and researching this and saying, why is this not a more viable path? And we already talked a lot about it, like education, not necessarily preparing for the kids for the workforce, but then also the small businesses that do exist. How do we strengthen them to grow them and have them become the viable entities, right? So a lot of times we talk about new business incubation, which is fine, but how do we strengthen the current businesses that are there? And we're taking a slightly smaller approach. We've designed a small business support system to strengthen small businesses, to grow small businesses as part of our job creation plan, where we will wrap them around with support. So when you think about small businesses, and I'm going to go back to the contractors for a moment,
right?
A lot of small businesses who might be your mom and pop, like, painting companies or sheetrock companies, sheet metal companies, oftentimes they're afraid to join some of these larger contractors because of the risks and exposures that are associated with it. So similar to kind of how I described our internship program, where we like to try to remove risk, right, so that folks can grow, we're taking a similar approach with our small business design thinking and being able to help wrap supports like legal services, marketing services, bookkeeping services. We heard quite a bit through the pandemic. Small businesses were boxed out of a lot of federal assistance because they didn't have certified payrolls or they didn't have proper accounting. So we're creating a shared service model where Skills would hire an attorney, Skills would hire a bookkeeper, accountant, Skills would hire a marketing generalist, an IT generalist, all of those things that we know are business services that are essential for any business, mine being a nonprofit as well, right? Data is driving decisions. IT is an indispensable part of small businesses. But small businesses, we go back to capacity and resources. Many of them can't afford it or don't have the capacity to, or are intimidated by being able to access those services. So through this shared service support, small businesses, we're hopeful. We're in the process. We're in the running for some, hopefully some good dollars, Mark. And I'll come back and make sure that you're part of that announcement. Where we will create. We're hurrying. It's happening hopefully soon, but I don't want to be premature and announce it. But we worked with 5 municipalities, East Providence being one of them, as well as our state federal delegation, Commerce Corporation, to be able to bring some federal dollars in to create this shared service ecosystem. So small businesses are not incurring significant expenses when it comes to legal services, marketing services, IT services. They're actually getting free technical support that'll help drive, like, do I need to wire and have all of these, bells and whistles? What does cybersecurity mean to a small business? How do I know what package I need to go to? So we can help them really think through that, right? Again, intimidating. And I'm going through that right now as a small business, executive. We're a nonprofit, but we're a small business at the end of the day. Do I really need these 7 things for cybersecurity, right? Like, is that an expense that I need to take on? You want to have that trusted advisor to walk through that with you. So we're trying to build that trusted advisor pool. We also want to make sure that that shared service pool that I just mentioned, the lawyer, the IT professional, the marketing professional, that they also are accessible in multiple languages, so that some of our small business owners where English might not be their primary language also have access to that as well. And we're hoping to connect them to everything that's rolling out under the Rhode Island Rebounds program, right? So taking advantage of a lot of those dollars that are coming out to be able to support small businesses. We want to be able to help be that intermediary or that connector. And there's a lot more to that, Mark, but we've started this process about 4.5 years ago, and it's finally coming together.
That's great. And we're members of the Rhode Island Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and the Rhode Island Black Business Association. And I'm assuming that you have a good relationship with not only them, but also with the community for when those individuals need to get jobs. And I want to go into an entirely different direction, if you don't mind, because we only have 2 minutes left. I'm, in full disclosure, I am on the Rhode Island Paralegal Advisory Board, where we set conditions, parameters. We're subject to ABA, American Bar Association rules and regulations. But I can tell you that there is such a need for paralegals, which is a fairly good paying position across this state and really across this region. I'm often dumbfounded as to how we cannot get additional individuals into that. And I realize there are costs, but Roger Williams University has such an aggressive paralegal program that individuals could come out and they would automatically get a job because the demand is so high. Is there anything you do on that side?
No, but Mark, it sounds like you and I should do a follow-up call, and let's see if we could put in a pitch to Real Jobs Rhode Island to make that happen. And that's the beauty of the Real Jobs model, right? It is that demand driven. It gets tagged to actual jobs. And for any small business that is out there, I really encourage you to look at what Department of Labor and Training has done to make these programs accessible and designed for your needs. And Mark, I'm going to go back to a lot of the industry associations that you mentioned. Majority of these industry associations already have those connections, and we are one of those major services that you have access to. So if I can just go back to the, if you're looking for talent, if you have job openings, if you're struggling to find talent, our services are free because of the funding that DLT puts to the table. So feel free to reach out. We have a client services team that works directly with our employers. We will customize our services based on your needs and your hiring timelines. We run job boards, marketing campaigns, community events. We're out on TV. We help produce a biweekly segment on Channel 12 News called On the Job. Reach out and we will just start a conversation and figure out how we can help find the talent that you need.
That's great. Believe it or not, we have gone 30 minutes. I want to thank you, Nina, for being with us today. I've learned a lot. I agree with Channel 12. Brian Iacono, who's a friend, who's a news director over there, is a great guy. And that reaching out into the community is really essential for all of us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Nina, thank you for being with me on Mondays with Mark, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks, and have a great weekend.